Hi everyone, and welcome to The Sleepy Scientist. I'm really happy you're here. Tonight, we're going to go on a calm and quiet trip to learn something amazing. So get comfy, take a deep breath, and let's enjoy this peaceful science story together. Before we start, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from and what time is it for you right now? If you like relaxing science videos, don't forget to tap the like button. Now let's begin. The night falls not with silence but with a breath. Soft and cool, rustling through the leaves like an ancient lullaby. Somewhere beneath the hush of sleeping trees, a ripple stirs the stillness. It is not the wind, it is not the owl, it is a flutter, a whisper with wings, brushing past the velvet dark. This is the hour when the pollinators rise, the ones who thrive not in sun, but in silver shadow. Above a sleepy meadow, the moonlight spills gently onto petals curled close to the day, now unfurling like paper dreams. Pale blossoms that seemed still only moments ago begin to shimmer, kissed by dew and driven by a code older than time. They open slowly, not for sunlight, but for scent, exhaling tiny bursts of perfume that drift upward, signalling the dance has begun. High above, the hawk moth stirs. She feels it before she sees it. The language of flowers speaks not in colours or words, but in vaporous trails, in sweet invisible ribbons that thread through the cool night air. Her antennae, delicate as whispers themselves, begin to trace the invisible. She arcs her body with grace, turning not with haste, but with memory stored in wings that beat like soft applause. There are no spotlights here, only moonbeams, yet her movements are rehearsed, ancient, exact. Her wings, veined like leaves, dusted with scales finer than sand, shimmer as they pull her forward. Each beat is a quiet promise. She will find the bloom. She always does. Below, a cactus flower awakens, glowing faintly like a lantern of flesh and nectar. Its petals, waxy and white, know the hour. They wait all day for this moment. Their time is not measured in clocks, but in phases of light. Some flowers bloom for just one night, offering everything they are to a single visitor. If missed, they vanish by dawn. The hawk moth arrives not as a thief but as a guest. Her tongue, a coiled miracle longer than her body, unwinds like a ribbon in the dark. It dips into the depths of the flower where nectar pools like quiet honey. In this act, something ancient unfolds. She drinks, and the flower marks her with pollen, a gentle dusting, a kiss of continuity. She leaves nothing broken, no petal torn, just a gift traded for another, sweetness for survival. As she lifts into the air again, the pollen clings to her body like moonlight on silk, ready to be carried to the next bloom, the next whispered rendezvous. Other pollinators join the night. Bats with leathery wings and noses tuned to the scent of ripe fruit flit between treetops. Their sonar maps the air with invisible echoes, allowing them to find the hidden banquet of figs and banana blossom. A single bat can pollinate hundreds of flowers in a single night, its fur brushed with yellow dust like the sun held captive in twilight. Beetles, too, lumber toward their night's work, guided by the warmth of certain petals and the scent of fermenting fruit. Their movement is slower, heavier, but no less vital. Each one an unlikely messenger carrying pieces of life between quiet blooms. Even in darkness the world grows. It multiplies, exchanges, breathes. These pollinators of the night are artists working in secret, never praised by daylight, never seen by most. But their roles are written deep into the bones of every fruit we bite, every seed that finds soil, every flower that waits with quiet hope. And as the meadow turns silver beneath the moon, the air fills with motion. Not chaotic, but choreographed. This is the midnight ballet of survival, the hush-hush ritual of exchange, and in the middle of it all, wings continue to whisper. They whisper not only to the moon, but to memory, to time, to everything that leans on the unseen for life. You can almost feel them, brushing past the ears of sleeping foxes, the fur of a deer resting near the tree line, the feathers of owls watching without hunger. Every wing beat, every sip of nectar, every particle of pollen passed from one blossom to the next. They are all the threads in a fabric we rarely notice but always wear. The world is stitched together in darkness by creatures that fly while we dream. And perhaps somewhere in the hush the moon listens. Perhaps she guides them with more than light. Perhaps the hush itself is part of the dance. A rhythm felt only in sleep, but written forever into bloom. Now imagine drifting deeper into that same moonlit meadow, where the air grows cooler and heavier, with the scent of jasmine, night-blooming cereus, and wild honeysuckle. The pollinators still move, but slower now, as if time itself thickens with dew. The rhythm of their wings becomes a kind of lullaby, one that carries more than movement. It carries memory, not just in the creatures themselves, but in the plants that wait for them. Memory lives in the nectar, the bloom, the pulse of when to open and when to sleep. Some scientists believe that flowers know the hours, not because they wear watches or see stars, but because their cells hold rhythms inherited from 1,000 generations of night. This timekeeping, or this soft counting of darkness and dawn, is called a circadian rhythm, but it feels more like a whisper passed down through roots and rain. Flowers bloom not just when it is dark, but when it is right. And rightness in nature is never random. The queen of the night cactus opens only once a year, a single blossom the size of a child's head, pure white and glowing. It waits until the air is just so, warm, dry, silent. And when the moment comes, the bloom unfurls in an hour, offering its full heart to any pollinator who dares to find it in time. By morning it will be gone, but the memory of its bloom will live on in seeds and in the wings of moths who remember the taste. Pollinators too remember, not as we do, with stories or dates, but with bodies that recall scents, shapes, and pathways. A moth may return to the same patch of moonflowers each night, guided not by sight but by an internal map made of smell and sensation. Its brain, though smaller than a grain of rice, holds patterns of motion like a symphony. Neurons fire with the memory of sweetness, of warmth, of the precise shape of petals that folded like stars. Even more mysterious are the bats, those night-flying mammals with hearts that beat faster than a songbird's. Some bats can see, some can't, but all can hear with astonishing clarity, using echolocation to bounce sound off the world and build invisible pictures in the dark. A flower, to a bat, is not a colour or a shape, but a sound print, a unique echo that sings of nectar and welcome. Scientists have found that certain flowers evolve to shape their petals like little radar dishes, perfectly tuned to the sonar of the bats they depend on. This is not chance, it is collaboration written in silence. In the tropics, the baobab tree blooms at night. Its wide, waxy petals and musky scent are magnets for fruit bats, who flit from tree to tree with leathery wings and clever tongues. As they feed, the bats' faces and necks gather pollen, which they carry unknowingly to the next blossom. The tree does not speak, but it remembers, encoded in its trunk and its time, that this mutual exchange is what keeps the forest alive. What's even more wondrous is that many of these night flowers are white, not for beauty but for visibility. White petals catch the moon's touch like paper in candlelight, glowing softly against the darkened foliage. It is not enough to smell sweet, they must be seen in shadow. Nature, ever the gentle architect, designs even colour for the quietest audience. Imagine a landscape where each bloom is a lantern and each pollinator is a keeper of light. They do not see the world as we do, but through vibrations, scent trails and magnetic whispers. Some moths can detect a single molecule of scent in the air and follow it across fields. Some beetles are drawn not to petals but to warmth, choosing flowers that give off just a little extra heat. Science tells us that pollination is about reproduction, a biological necessity. But here in this hush of night, it feels like something softer. A conversation perhaps, one held without words, without sound, without need for applause. The yucca plant depends entirely on a specific moth, the yucca moth, which does more than collect pollen. She gathers it in mouthfuls and carries it deliberately to another flower, pressing it into the stigma with her tiny legs. She does this so her eggs laid in the ovary will have seeds to feed on when they hatch. Too many eggs and the flower aborts. Too few and the cycle dies, so she lays just enough. This balance, this fragile agreement between flower and moth, has lasted longer than most civilizations. No one taught her, no one watches, yet she performs her task with ancient precision, night after night, generation after generation. In the moonlight, her shadow barely registers on the leaf, but her impact echoes in entire ecosystems. There is a word for this kind of relationship, mutualism, where two species depend on each other for life. But that word feels too sharp for what happens here. It's not just dependency, it's trust. A flower trusting that a winged visitor will come, a moth trusting that the bloom will open at the right time, and the night, silent and silver, holds them both in place. Sometimes it's easy to think of the natural world as loud and busy, birds singing, bees buzzing, predators stalking prey, but beneath that visible layer is this, the slow dance of pollination in darkness, a ballet of silence and scent, of wings and petals, of time measured not by ticking clocks but by blooming hearts. And though the world may not watch, it turns because of this. Trees bear fruit because of what happens in these hours. Fields grow fuller, seeds are born, forests continue, all because somewhere in the dark a moth found the right flower. It humbles you, doesn't it? The thought that something so quiet, so unseen, can matter so much. That in the darkness, without spectacle or song, life persists. Now, let your breath slow. Let the image settle in your mind, a meadow under moonlight, flowers glowing faintly, wings whispering from bloom to bloom. It is a story with no narrator, no applause, no drama. Just presence, just a soft rhythm, over and over, echoing through the leaves and the stars. And if you listen carefully, if you let yourself drift just enough, you might begin to feel it. The hush of the night, the scent of jasmine, the wing beat of something ancient passing just beyond your window. You won't see it, but it sees you, and in that moment you are part of the dance too. The night begins to lean toward morning, though the stars still hold their place, quiet and pinned, like soft lanterns against the dark. The meadow, once alive with fluttering wings and blooming scent, starts to slow, but the story has not ended. It has only begun to settle, like pollen resting gently on a petal after the breeze has passed. This is the hour when the pollinators begin their retreat, slipping back into the folds of bark and earth, hidden leaves and curled grass, places only they remember, and as they vanish into the quiet, their work lingers, stitched into the living world with invisible thread. Each flower that received a visitor now holds a secret, a trace of life passed on, a beginning shaped by what seemed so small. The moths, their wings powdered with pollen, curl into hollow stems. The bats, full and drifting, hang from branches upside down, their fur still dusted with the gold of night. Beetles burrow down into soil warmed by the day before. Nothing announces their departure. No farewell, just stillness. And yet so much has changed. A cactus bloom, now spent, closes slowly in the blue breath before dawn. Its petals wilt not from sadness but from purpose fulfilled. It offered itself to the night and was answered. The seeds inside it now wait, quiet and firm like thoughts planted in silence. What will become of them lies beyond the bloom's knowing, but it does not need to know. It only needs to give, and so the cycle continues, not just across days, but across years, generations, even centuries. Whole forests have arisen because a bat visited a flower. Entire ecosystems pulse forward because a moth chose one bloom over another. The softness of these choices belies their power. But this is the truth of the natural world. It often moves by whispers, not by roars. Somewhere deep in a tropical basin, a strange flower opens beneath the heavy air of midnight. It is the durian, known for its thorned skin and powerful scent. To some it smells sweet, to others it smells unbearable. But to fruit bats, it is irresistible. They gather, not in swarms but in quiet clusters, feasting and pollinating in one motion. Without them the fruit would vanish, and with the fruit, so too would the trees that depend on it, and the animals that feed upon its flesh, and the soil that shelters its roots. Elsewhere, in a desert valley, the agave plant stands tall and still. It has waited years to bloom, sometimes decades. Then in one miraculous surge, it sends up a towering stalk, flowering in a single season. Its blooms glow like soft lanterns, calling to long-nosed bats who arrive under starlit skies, their journey spanning hundreds of miles. These bats, drawn by memory and instinct, feed deeply and carry pollen from stalk to stalk, weaving the desert's survival into their nightly path. When the agave is done, it dies, but its seeds fall, and so life folds itself forward, from wing to petal, from dust to bloom. It is not just plants that rely on these midnight messengers. Entire cultures do too. In parts of Africa and Asia, night-pollinated plants produce medicines, dyes, fruits, and fibres essential to human life. Vanilla orchids, which must be hand-pollinated where their natural pollinators are gone, remind us that when even one thread of this silent web is broken, the cost is steep. And so, scientists and farmers alike now listen more carefully to the night, tracing the trails of moths, mapping the movement of bats, observing which blooms open when and why. And what of us? We too are part of this gentle story, even if we seldom see it. The fruit on our tables, the seeds we plant, the flowers we admire in moonlit gardens, all touched, in some way, by the quiet choreography of nighttime pollinators. Every apple, melon, cashew, guava, or banana may carry in its history the gentle kiss of a wing, the light touch of a furry body moving from petal to petal. We are nourished by an intimacy we rarely witness. There is something humbling in that. To know that while we sleep, while cities glow and tides turn, a parallel world continues, not beneath us, but beside us. A world built not on dominance, but on cooperation. Not on noise, but on mutual need. Where scent is language, where silence is agreement, where trust is coded into petal and proboscis alike. And in this soft understanding, we might begin to see ourselves differently, not as separate from nature's rhythms, but as a note in the same melody. A species whose breath is tied to unseen wings, whose harvests bloom from invisible encounters, whose survival is not held alone, but shared with creatures who hum through the darkness. The sky, now lightening, takes on a quiet grey. The moon dips low, retiring behind the branches of tall pines. Flowers close again, pulling their petals inward like children returning to sleep. The dance has paused, not ended. Tonight it will begin again, and tomorrow, and the next night after that. It has always been this way, so let us honour it. This quiet labour of the dark. Let us remember that the world is shaped just as much by what is unseen as by what dazzles us in daylight. That mystery is not absence, but a kind of presence with softer edges, and that sometimes the truest kind of work is done without recognition, under cover of night, with grace, with gentleness, with wings that whisper. Now, if you close your eyes and let the breath slow in your chest, you might feel them still, the brush of a moth's flight, the faintest scent of a jasmine bloom, the warmth of pollen landing on skin. They are still out there beneath another moon in another meadow, dancing not for us, but for the world itself. And maybe, just maybe, that is enough. There are flowers that wait for darkness as if it were a lover. They do not bloom beneath the sun, nor do they seek the attention of bees or butterflies. Instead, they bide their time in shadow, still and quiet, until the light fades and the air cools. Only then, under stars and softened winds, do they open. Their petals stretch slowly, like arms waking from sleep, revealing not just beauty but purpose. These are the flowers that only open in darkness, and their story is one of patience, mystery, and quiet precision. In the pale stretches of desert and the thick folds of tropical forest, in hidden gardens and their moonlit hillsides, they bloom when most other life has gone to rest. To the human eye they are elusive, fleeting, delicate, often missed entirely. But to the right visitor they are lanterns in the dark, calling softly with scent rather than colour, with timing rather than display. Their world is a rhythm few notice, but it beats with the same certainty as tides and seasons. The evening primrose is one of the first to stir. As the sun sinks low, its green buds tremble. And then, as dusk wraps the sky in lavender, the petals begin to unfurl in a spiral motion one by one, like pages turning in a book written for the night. In just minutes, the flower is fully open, wide and pale yellow, its centre glowing with fresh pollen. It does not need a full day to shine, only an hour or two of twilight to invite in the nocturnal pollinators who remember it. Night-blooming jasmine follows, cloaking the air in sweetness so thick it feels like a memory you forgot you had. Its scent is not a luxury. It is a map, a signal, a promise whispered to moths that roam the dark. Their antennae, long and thread-like, pick up the signal from far away. They move not toward the brightest colour, but toward the strongest perfume, one built molecule by a molecule in the petal's tiny invisible workshops. The world of night bloomers is not a world of excess. It is a world of refinement, of exact timing, of quiet openings that speak to only a few. Some of these flowers open for just a few hours each year. Others bloom nightly, but only for a short while. The moonflower, as its name suggests, chooses to open when the moon is high, its large white blossoms glowing faintly in the dark like silken bowls of light. These are not flowers for the busy day. They are for those who wait, who move quietly, who know how to listen to stillness. Each bloom that opens after sundown carries with it a logic. The heat of the day is gone, and with it the water-stealing dryness that might harm the delicate petals. The creatures that feed by night, moths, bats, beetles, even small mammals, are awake and searching. By opening in darkness, these flowers avoid competition. They speak directly to their chosen guests, without interruption from bees or butterflies or the glare of noon. In parts of Central America, the flowering cactus called saguaro produces enormous white blooms that open only at night. They last just a few hours, yet within that narrow window, they become the centre of an entire ecosystem's attention. Bats arrive in flurries, guided by scent and memory, dipping into the thick flowers to drink and feed, brushing pollen from one cactus to the next. By dawn, the blooms close, and the plant returns to stillness, its work done. But why choose the dark at all? Why shun the sun, the pollinators of daylight, the warmth and visibility it brings? The answer lies not in avoidance, but in specialization. These flowers have evolved alongside the specific creatures, ones that thrive in the cool quiet of night. The night offers a gentler world, one less crowded, where scent travels farther, and softness is a survival strategy. Pollination at night is no less vital than it is by day. In fact, for some ecosystems, it is more so. In rainforests, many species of trees rely on night-blooming flowers to reproduce. In deserts, where the sun scorches by day, night is the only safe time to bloom and draw in partners for life's quiet transactions. Each plant, in its way, reads the world and answers with timing, with fragrance, with trust. Not all flowers announce themselves with scent. Some use warmth, like the voodoo lily, whose deep maroon bloom generates heat to spread its unique aroma farther into the night. Others glow faintly, reflecting moonlight or offering luminous patterns visible only to those with the right kind of eyes. Some petals are shaped like funnels to catch sound or amplify vibration. Evolution, slow and patient, has shaped each bloom into an invitation carefully addressed. The bat-pollinated flowers are often large, pale, and tough. They must withstand visits from animals that hover and feed with a strength different from bees. The flowers offer generous portions of nectar, thick and nourishing, and in return receive broad sweeps of pollen, carried swiftly across distances. These exchanges happen without ceremony, yet they shape entire forests. There's a kind of humility to it, this flowering in darkness, to open when no one is watching, to offer beauty and sustenance without seeking praise, and yet their timing is not random. It is finely tuned, embedded in each petal's unfolding, in the minute shifts of temperature and light, in the ancient pull of lunar rhythms. These plants are not passive, they are listening, waiting, responding, and when the moment arrives, they bloom with absolute certainty. In some cultures, night-blooming flowers are seen as symbols of longing, of mystery, of unseen connections. The Brahma camel in the Himalayas is said to bloom only at night and only rarely, a sacred moment that draws crowds who wait silently under the stars, hoping to witness the opening. The flower has no need for human eyes, but still, people gather. Something about the darkness, the slowness, the quiet transformation speaks to something deep inside us. Perhaps we recognize ourselves in these blooms. We too have parts that only open in quiet. We too carry beauty that thrives away from attention. There are things within us, dreams, feelings, memories, that bloom not in bright daylight, but in moments of stillness. The flowers that open in darkness remind us that growth doesn't always need light. Sometimes it needs space, coolness, calm time. Now the night stretches on, the stars shift. Somewhere a moonflower opens slowly, and a moth changes course drawn by a signal we cannot see. Their meeting will be brief but meaningful, and tomorrow another flower will open, just as quietly, just as surely. It will not wait for permission. It will not ask to be seen. It will simply know this is the moment, and it will bloom. Let us now drift further into the heart of night, where the air hums with secrets and the world softens under the hush of stars. Here, in this cool and tender hour, the flowers that only open in darkness continue their quiet rituals. They are not waiting for applause. They are not competing for attention. Their story is one of devotion, not to sun or show, but to the rhythms that live beyond sight. And as we move deeper into this unseen garden, the truth becomes clearer. Darkness does not mean absence. It means transformation. Each flower that opens by the moonlight is part of an ancient choreography. These are not isolated miracles. They are synchronized with the breath of the world, with the soil's memory, with the hidden paths of creatures that travel by night. In this world, time is not a straight line, but a spiral, coiling through generations of bloom and flight. The night-blooming cereus is a perfect example, a cactus that opens its blossom just once each year, and only for a few short hours. It waits through heat, through drought, through wind, for the exact right moment. And when it comes, the bloom unfurls like a slow sigh, revealing its delicate white petals and golden core to the bats and moths who have learned its scent. To witness this is to see patience made visible. But the cereus does not bloom alone. All across the world, night bloomers awaken with similar grace. The tuberose sends out its heady perfume in waves, attracting pollinators from distances the human nose cannot imagine. The night phlox, though small, emits a fragrance rich with spice and vanilla, irresistible to the long-tongued moths that seek it out. The sacred datura, opening only after sundown, offers its large trumpet-like blossoms to hawk moths who hover with elegance, sipping deeply from its nectar as they collect pollen upon their bodies. These exchanges are not accidents. They are mutual understandings carved from generations of shared dependence. In the quiet of these nights, something else stirs, the memory inside each plant. Scientists now understand that plants too keep track of time, not with clocks or eyes, but with an internal rhythm called the circadian cycle. Even in complete darkness, flowers can anticipate the approach of night and begin preparing to bloom before the sun has fully set. It is as though they listen to the Earth's heartbeat and respond in kind. Their cells, sensitive to the smallest changes in light and temperature, work together like an orchestra, tuning themselves to the coming moment. It is not reaction, it is preparation, a kind of wisdom that lives in the roots and rises in the stem. And while these blooms open for pollinators, they also open for the land itself. By choosing to bloom at night, these flowers protect themselves from the harshness of the day, from scorching heat, from desiccation, from the competition of more vibrant, sun-hungry plants. The night offers fewer threats, less noise, more intimacy. The interactions that happen here are quiet, but no less important. A single visit from a moth may be enough to ensure the future of an entire lineage of plants. The moths in turn are not mindless. They carry with them memories written in scent, in pattern, in the tilt of petal against wind. Some moths prefer certain flowers not just for their nectar, but for the way the blossoms feel against their legs, or the warmth they hold from the day. Their navigation is not driven by light, but by smell and touch and subtle electrical fields given off by blooming plants. Each flight is a story, a tracing of invisible threads that connect soil to sky. And then there are the bats, those furry-winged navigators of the dark who rely not only on scent, but on echolocation. To a bat, a flower can sing. The shape of a blossom can bounce back a particular echo, letting the bat know not only where the flower is, but how far it extends and whether it is ready to offer nectar. In response, some plants have evolved bowl-shaped flowers that amplify their signal. It is not magic, it is mutual design, a world shaped in conversation between wings and petals. This relationship runs deep. In the Pacific Islands, a particular tree blooms at night with blossoms that can only be reached by the long tongues of flying foxes. If the bats disappear, so do the flowers. And if the flowers fail to bloom, the bats must go elsewhere, weakening both populations. It is a gentle interdependence, one that reminds us that strength does not always come from force, but from reciprocity. One gives, the other receives, and in giving, both survive. In places where humans have disrupted these cycles, cutting forests, introducing lights that confuse nocturnal pollinators, using pesticides that kill indiscriminately, the night-blooming flowers suffer. Fewer pollinators arrive, seeds go unformed, blooms open with no visitors and close again without reward. The conversation is broken, but even in this the plants continue. They try again the next night, and the next. Some wait years for the right moment, but they do not stop blooming. There is a resilience in these flowers, one that speaks not through boldness, but through persistence. They do not need the sun to thrive. They do not need crowds to matter. Their beauty lies in the quiet certainty of their purpose: to bloom, to feed, to pass life forward. Even in places of concrete and glass, you might still find them, tucked away in city gardens, blooming behind fences, their fragrance spilling into alleyways and courtyards. They may not be noticed, but they are there. Reminders that nature does not vanish when the world turns away. It waits, it breathes, it opens. To sit near a night-blooming flower is to feel time differently. The air slows, the noise of the day fades. You begin to notice things: the gentle rustle of leaves, the way shadows stretch, the brief flicker of wings. It becomes easier to listen, not with ears, but with attention. These flowers do not call out, but if you're quiet enough, you will hear them anyway. Some say that humans are drawn to the moon because it reflects something in us: a longing, a slowness, a need to see clearly in the dark. Perhaps that's why these night flowers feel so familiar. They are mirrors in bloom. They tell us that beauty can be soft, that purpose can be quiet, that timing is its own kind of power. And so the cycle continues. Flowers open, wings respond, pollen moves from one petal to another, seeds form in the silent spaces between. The darkness is not empty. It is full of messages, full of offerings, full of life unfolding quietly and completely. And as the night stretches on, a single flower opens somewhere, unseen, unsought, but not unloved. It does not need to be watched to be worthy. It blooms because that is what it was made to do, and in that act, it fulfills a role more ancient than memory, more elegant than sound. The stars do not cheer, the moon does not applaud, but the bloom glows all the same, because blooming is enough. The night begins its gentle exhale, as if the world is slowly breathing out all that was held in stillness. A hush lingers, soft and intact, like silk laid gently over the earth. The moon, now lower in the sky, leans toward the west, its pale light fading into the indigo edge of morning. But before the sky brightens, one last symphony continues in the dark, the quiet bloom and closing of flowers who live by starlight. This is the hour of soft returns, of petals folding inward, of wings vanishing into bark and brush. And still, even now, something stirs. Something finishes what it started in the mystery of the night. Many of these flowers that only open in darkness are already preparing to disappear. The datura, bold in its trumpet-shaped glory just hours ago, now droops like a dream dissolving. The evening primrose, having offered its nectar to the night's chosen pollinators, begins to fade, not with drama, but with grace. Their beauty was never meant to last through the day. It was meant to exist for just long enough to attract, to give, to receive, to transform, and now their role is complete, for tonight. But what lingers is not loss. What remains is legacy, in the tiny grains of pollen left on the back of a moth, in the fruit that will form where petals once bloomed, in the seed sleeping quietly inside a swelling pod. This is what the night flowers know, that the impact of a moment can last far longer than the moment itself. Their short bloom is not failure, it is design. Elsewhere, deep in forest canopies and dry desert flats, the creatures who answered those midnight invitations return to hiding. A bat tucks itself beneath a palm frond, upside down and heartbeat slow. A sphinx moth folds its wings under a leaf, dusted with the perfume of 1,000 blossoms. Tiny beetles crawl into the shadows of soil, full from their nocturnal feast. They will carry with them the invisible traces of contact, the transfer of life from one bloom to another, and without knowing it, they have rewritten the future. In the aftermath of the night's bloom, the air feels charged with something unspoken, not quite sequoias, not quite sound, as if the land itself is remembering. What happened here was not witnessed by many eyes, yet its effects will ripple outward, reaching into ecosystems, into food chains, into seasons yet to come. The moonflower may have closed, but its work is just beginning. The seeds it will produce will one day sprout new vines, climbing fences and trees, preparing for the same moonlit moment years from now. There is a patience in these cycles that humbles the hurried human mind. We measure days in hours, in deadlines, in lists, but the flowers of the night measure time in readiness, in ripeness, in the careful waiting for the right darkness, the right temperature, the right silence. And when the moment arrives, they do not hesitate, they bloom. Some of these flowers are already forgotten by morning, their petals crumpled, their scent faded. Passers-by might miss them entirely, unaware that anything happened at all, but the moths know, the bats remember. The plants themselves hold the imprint of that exchange. Beneath the soil, the next bloom is already being prepared, quietly, invisibly, with the same sacred precision as before. And still some night bloomers linger a little longer into the dawn. The queen of the night, if undisturbed, may remain open long enough to catch the faintest kiss of sunrise. Its large white blossom glowing in the early light looks like a story left behind from a dream. Morning glories, though not strictly nocturnal, echo the same rhythm, opening as the first rays of sun slip across the ground. They too bloom for brief hours, folding by noon, giving all they have in one short breath. In this way the cycle continues. Flowers open in silence, creatures arrive drawn by scent and instinct, pollination occurs in soft exchanges, and life, almost invisibly, moves forward. No trumpet sounds, no spotlight shines. Yet without these moments, many of the fruits we eat, the forests we cherish, and the medicines we rely on would vanish. What happens in the dark sustains the light. It is easy to think of nature as bold. Thunderstorms, blazing sunsets, the roar of oceans, the bloom of colour in spring. But these night flowers remind us that another kind of nature exists. A slower, subtler world. One that unfolds like a whisper. One that does not compete for attention, but fulfills its purpose quietly with elegance and rhythm. In that world nothing is wasted. No scent goes unanswered. No bloom opens in vain. And we, the watchers and wanderers of this earth, might learn from this. We might remember that visibility is not the same as value, that silence can carry meaning, that something done gently without notice can still shape the course of life, just as a single moth may carry pollen across a canyon, just as a single flower may bloom once a decade and still matter. So too can we live with intention, even if no one sees. Perhaps this is the deeper truth that lies in the flowers that bloom at night. Not just a story of biology or evolution or environmental roles, but a story of existence, of finding one's hour, of giving what you were meant to give, even if it happens in shadow, especially if it happens in shadow. As morning begins to press against the edges of the world, and the petals of the last moonlit bloom fold inward like secrets returning home, a hush falls again, not an ending, but a pause before the next cycle, before the next night, before the next quiet miracle. And in that pause everything feels sacred, the unopened buds, the cooling soil, the gentle curve of a vine waiting for dusk. Each part holds a promise, not loudly but deeply, a promise to bloom when the world grows still, a promise to offer life in silence, a promise to continue, regardless of who is watching. So the flowers rest, the night exhales, and the earth prepares quietly for darkness to return again. And it will. Some messages do not travel by voice or vision. They ride the air instead, invisible, delicate, precise. In the quiet of the night, when the trees hold their breath and even the stars seem to listen, a different kind of language stirs. It does not flash or flicker. It does not shout. It floats. It curls. It drifts across fields and over water like music meant only for those who know how to listen with their skin, with their wings, with something deeper than sight. These are the scent trails that thread the dark, winding through the starlight like silk. And to those who follow them, they are everything. Imagine standing in the middle of a moonlit forest. The leaves above you hold the scent of rain. The soil below carries the memory of roots, but somewhere just beyond reach another smell lingers. Sweeter, warmer, unfamiliar. It is the breath of a flower opening somewhere in the dark, releasing its signature into the air molecule by molecule. That signal will not reach every creature. It is tuned like a private melody to the body of a particular guest. Perhaps a hawk moth, perhaps a fruit bat, perhaps a beetle whose sense of smell is so fine it can detect a single drop of nectar before it even appears. For these creatures, scent is not decoration. It is direction. It is invitation. It is map and meaning wrapped into one. Their world is not built from colour or edges or outlines. It is made from gradients of smell, from currents that tell them where to turn and when to stop. And the plants that send these signals are not passive. They craft them with precision, using chemical compounds shaped over millennia to speak in the air. A night-blooming jasmine, for instance, does not simply smell sweet. It produces a complex mixture of volatile molecules, benzenoids, monoterpenes, esters, that mix in exact proportions to attract specific nighttime pollinators. What smells like nostalgia to a human nose smells like direction to a moth. And different flowers speak different dialects. Some emit musky, earthy tones to call in beetles. Others blend floral and fruity notes for bats. The message is never random. It is always a request. Come here, bring your wings, take something sweet and carry something away. Once released, the scent becomes part of the air itself, caught by breezes, twisted by the texture of trees, lifted and dropped by layers of temperature. Yet somehow the right creatures find it. Hawk moths, with their delicate antennae lined with tiny receptors, can detect these signals from miles away. Their antennae are not just sense organs, they are instruments tuned to the orchestra of the night. A single molecule can be enough to change their flight path, to send them gliding across a meadow or hovering above a bloom, unspooling their long proboscis like a ribbon toward its source. And what of the bats, those sky swimmers of twilight? While much of their navigation relies on echolocation, scent plays a vital role when they approach food. Some bats use their nostrils to triangulate floral aromas. They can distinguish between flowers that are fresh and those already visited. And some plants have evolved to smell strongest just before midnight, releasing bursts of fragrance in pulses, timed with the activity of their preferred pollinators. The night becomes a clock made not of hands or numbers, but of molecules on the wind. These scent trails do not only guide, they also bind. When a pollinator follows the trail, finds the flower and drinks from its core, it does more than feed. It receives pollen, a gift of dust and future clinging to its body, caught in fur or scale or joint. And when it follows the next trail to the next bloom, it delivers that message forward. In this way, the scents do not just call, they carry memory. Each trail is a bridge between one bloom and the next, a way of weaving the landscape into a single breathing whole. Some scientists now believe that flowers are more dynamic than we thought, adjusting their scent output in real time based on humidity, temperature, and time of night. A plant might release more scent on a still night than on a windy one. It might bloom earlier after a dry spell or later after a warm day. The process is not mechanical, it is responsive. A kind of atmospheric awareness held in the cells of leaves and petals. And while we humans often speak of flowers as symbols, of love, of hope, of loss, in the world of the night pollinators, they are not metaphors, they are messengers. Living beacons that shape not only the movements of individual creatures, but the structure of entire ecosystems. In some tropical forests, scent trails are so intricate that different layers of the canopy hold different fragrance languages. Ground-dwelling pollinators follow earthy, heavy scents. Treetop feeders follow lighter, brighter ones. And in between, a dance of overlapping signals unfolds every night, choreographed by the molecules and memory. Even seeds respond to scent. Some lie dormant until they detect chemical hints from the roots of other plants, or from the waste of animals who have eaten their fruit. Scent does not just guide, it instructs, it awakens, it teaches the land what is happening and what is possible. And so the night, though dark, becomes full of pathways, not visible to us, but vivid to those who move in tune with the molecules. Every breeze becomes a page in a story. Every flower becomes a voice, and every creature that listens becomes part of the telling. To walk through such a night is to be surrounded by meaning, not loud, not insistent, but everywhere. The air itself becomes textured, woven with clues and conversations. A human might miss them, too focused on the stars above or the path below, but pause long enough, breathe deeply enough, and something shifts. A faint sweetness, a sudden warmth, a whisper in the air that wasn't there before. You won't know what it means, but something inside you will understand that it means something. Even in our own lives, scent is the keeper of memory. A certain flower might return us to childhood. A familiar perfume might carry us into a forgotten story. The molecules we breathe become tied to emotions, to moments, to meaning. Perhaps that is why this world of scent trails in the starlight feels so profound. It touches something ancient in us, the part that listened long before we spoke. Now, imagine that far off beyond a hill or a tree line, a new flower begins to open. Slowly, carefully, it releases its first breath into the night. Its scent is unfamiliar. Its voice is new, but already something has noticed. A moth changes course. A bat shifts its glide. The air, still cooling from the day, carries the signal forward, bending it, shaping it, delivering it. No eyes have seen this meeting yet. No ears have heard. But it is happening. One trail among many, threading the world with quiet intention. And the stars look on, their light unchanged, their silence steady. Because in the language of scent no one speaks aloud, and yet everything answers. Let us return now to the softest part of the night, that velvet stretch where the darkness feels full, not empty, and every breath carries something ancient. The scent trails drifting through this time are no longer sharp with newness, but have settled into layers, folded gently over one another like silk upon silk. The first fragrances released at twilight have begun to mingle with the deeper, muskier tones of flowers that bloom in full darkness. It is in this weaving that the real magic happens. Each trail is a line in a sentence. Each molecule is a word, and the creatures that follow them become fluent in a language that never needed sound. In the dry deserts of northern Mexico, the night-blooming cacti exhale their messages into the cooling air. The saguaro, standing tall and ancient, releases a mellow, almost melon-like aroma from its blossom perched high above the sandy earth. These scent notes are not strong at ground level, but in the thin air where nectar bats fly, they spread like soft ribbons. The lesser long-nosed bat picks up the signal mid-flight, adjusting its path almost imperceptibly, drawn not by sight but by chemical memory. It was here last year, and the year before that, and its mother before that. The scent is the same, the signal is steady, and so it returns. At the same moment, hundreds of miles away in a humid forest, an entirely different message is being delivered. A wild orchid, tucked between the folds of bark on an old tree, begins to bloom. Its fragrance is heady, heavy with spice and sweetness, designed not for bats but for a specific species of moth, one that emerges only in this season, only at this hour, with wings patterned to mimic dead leaves and antennae, so sensitive they can detect a single molecule of estragol released into the air. When the moth finds the flower, it hovers in a stillness so perfect that the forest holds its breath. It drinks deeply, and in doing so carries the orchid's message forward to another bloom, another moment. This is how scent becomes thread, connecting not just spaces, but species, time and memory. It does not drift aimlessly, it seeks, and those who are meant to find it do. Even in landscapes crowded with competing signals, the right pollinator will find the right flower. The chemistry of the bloom is that specific. Like a lock made for only one key, it ensures that each visitor is not only a guest, but a messenger. Some of the most fascinating examples of this precision come from plants that release different scents at different stages of their bloom. The corpse flower, massive and rare, opens only once every few years. On its first night it smells of rotting flesh, a scent repulsive to most but irresistible to carrion beetles and flesh flies. They arrive quickly, drawn from miles away, seeking what they believe is a meal. But inside the flower they find nothing to eat, only warmth and a place to crawl. In doing so, they pick up pollen and transfer it to the next bloom. On the second day the scent changes, softer, sweeter, to attract a different set of insects, completing the process. The flower never moves, but its message shifts, evolves, responds. It is fluent in many tongues. In other species, scent is used not only to attract, but to time the visit. Some flowers release their fragrance only after a certain level of humidity is reached, or only when the moon is in a specific phase. This is not superstition. It is science held in tissue and timing. These cues help ensure that the pollinators are active, that the air will carry the signal properly, that the bloom will not waste its precious resources shouting into an empty skier. There is no room for error in such fleeting exchanges. A flower that blooms too early may go unseen. Too late, and its pollinator may have passed by, so they measure with light. They wait with patience, and when the hour is right, they speak. The creatures who answer these calls are not just listeners, they are interpreters. Their bodies are shaped by the same evolutionary rhythms. The moth's antennae are feathered to capture the most molecules. The bat's snout is tuned to sense as much as sound. Even tiny flies have receptors so specific that they ignore all but one type of bloom. In return, the plants reward them, not always with nectar, but sometimes with shelter, warmth, or simply a place to rest. These relationships, built over millennia, form the backbone of ecosystems too quiet to be seen in daylight. And there is more. In the soil below these flowers, other scents are rising. Fungal threads, mycelium weave between roots, carrying messages of stress, of nourishment, of flowering above. Some plants, sensing the activity of pollinators, change their scent profile slightly to match. Others, when damaged or when their partners are threatened, produce more fragrance to ensure they are not forgotten. The night in this way becomes an echo chamber. Every bloom, every breath, a reply to something that came before. This sensory symphony goes far beyond individual moments. It scales up, influencing migration routes, breeding cycles, even climate interactions. If certain flowers fail to produce scent at the right time due to rising temperatures or pollution or habitat loss, their pollinators may miss them. A single mistimed bloom can ripple outward, reducing seed set, diminishing fruit production, altering entire food webs. That is the fragility of this system. That is the power of one trail lost. But there is also resilience here. Some species adapt, learning new routes, tuning their bodies to new scents. Some plants, in areas where their pollinators have vanished, develop new fragrances to attract generalists, and others hold firm, blooming in defiance, scenting the air whether or not anyone comes. Because the message matters, because the bloom itself is an act of faith. There is a lesson in this, one we cannot easily explain, but we can feel, that what we release into the world, our presence, our choices, our kindness, our purpose, does not vanish, even when unseen, even when it drifts into the quiet. It reaches, it touches, it lingers, just like scent, it becomes part of the air. And so the flowers continue, they release what they are into the night. They trust that something will hear, something will respond, and whether the reply comes in seconds or in seasons, they do not withhold. They offer themselves fully, gently, consistently. As the night deepens and the stars slip further west, another breeze stirs. A new trail forms, barely noticeable, except to the one who needs it most. And somewhere, perhaps high above the forest floor or just beyond a river's bend, wings adjust. A course is set, a promise is kept, because in the dark, in the quiet, in the scent-laced hush between stars and leaves, everything is still in motion. Everything is still connected. The stars begin to blur at the edges as morning draws closer, but the scent trails still linger, woven into the folds of night like soft embroidery stitched into the hem of darkness. The flowers that whispered their messages into the air a few hours ago are beginning to still. Their perfume grows fainter, their petals more relaxed, but the memory of their calling remains. Somewhere out there, a moth cradles a trace of jasmine on its wings. A bat carries the final sweetness of a cactus bloom in its fur. The story they told together is now carried forward, pressed into the future like seeds into soil. As the world begins to shift once again, as the edge of the sky warms with the light of the coming sun, those who travelled by scent return to rest. The long-tongued moths spiral downward, landing on bark or beneath leaves, where they fold their wings like quiet thoughts. Their bodies still hum from the night's flight, from the sugar-rich nectar that kept them in motion, from the trails they followed through cool air. Their journey, while unseen, was guided entirely by chemistry, by messages they could not read but always understood. Pollination is often framed as a transaction. A flower offers nectar, and in exchange the visitor carries pollen. But what happens in the dark along these scent trails feels more intimate than that. It feels like a trust shared across time. A flower must give without guarantee, releasing its fragrance into the vast unknown. And the creature that answers must do so without knowing exactly what it will find. There is vulnerability in that. There is hope. And there is, again and again, the miracle of a match. One body finding another, one signal answered by motion, one bloom fulfilled. In the wetlands, the sacred lotus holds a subtle aroma that grows stronger just before sunrise. It is a flower that knows the rhythm of water and sky. Its fragrance is not sharp but soft, almost warm like sunlight wrapped in steam. And even though it blooms in shallow pools, its scent rises into the pre-dawn air, attracting beetles who make their way along reed and root, drawn by the barely there trail. When they arrive, they burrow into the flower's heart, not for a moment, but for hours. They become part of the bloom's body, cradled in petal and perfume until the morning is well underway. By then, the work is done, the message has been delivered, and all around the world, in deserts and jungles, along coasts and across grasslands, this same ritual plays out in thousands of different ways. The scent trails vary and fruity, spicy, musky, sweet, but the intention is shared. Life seeks to meet itself again, to pass on its story, to leave behind something new, and scent, more than sound or shape or light, becomes the bridge across species and silence. It is not loud and it is not forceful, but it is enduring. Even when humans cannot perceive them, these messages remain. We may walk through a garden unaware of the intricate dialogue playing out above our heads. We may admire a flower for its colour, not knowing that its truest work is carried on the wind, invisible and essential. The molecules rise and drift and fall, some clinging to fur, some carried by air currents miles from their source. And in each direction, a potential encounter waits. This delicate system is not without threat. Light pollution, once rare, now spills across much of the night. Artificial lights confuse moths, pulling them away from the scent trails they would have otherwise followed. Pesticides dull their senses, damaging the receptors that once read the air like a book. Habitat loss removes not only the flowers, but the very airways through which their signals travel. And yet the flowers continue to try, they open, they release, they hope. Hope in a flower is not romantic, it is functional, it is the mechanism of survival, it is the act of blooming even when no pollinator has been seen for days. It is the decision to fill the air with meaning regardless of who might be listening. This kind of hope does not expect reward. It simply fulfills its design, again and again, season after season, and sometimes the response still comes. A single moth finds a garden that's been quiet. A bat returns to a corridor of trees where blooms remain. The trail, faint but familiar, draws them in. The conversation begins again, not because it was never broken, but because it can be mended. That is the strength of scent. It bridges absence. It waits without bitterness. It persists. There is a kind of sacred patience in the night's breathing. To follow a scent is to say yes to the unknown. It is to leave the comfort of stillness in search of something promised but unseen. This is what the pollinators do each night, and this is what the flowers ask of them. Not allegiance, not sacrifice, just presence, just a meeting in the middle of air and intention. And beneath this exchange, entire ecosystems move. Fruits ripen because of a midnight visit. Seeds form from a brush of fur across stamens. Trees regenerate because of trails followed in starlight. And humans, though removed from the immediate moment, benefit in ways too vast to count. Coffee, chocolate, bananas, agave, vanilla, each holds within it the trace of a night-born interaction, carried on scent, sealed in trust. As the light begins to rise and the stars fade, the scent trails grow quieter. The final pulses of fragrance lift into the sky and dissolve. The flowers that scent them begin to close or shift their chemistry, preparing for another cycle. But what has already passed cannot be undone. The air holds memory, even as it moves. The land remembers, even in silence, and the story continues. A new day begins, the world wakes. But if you could see through the air, if you could read the trails written in molecules and movement, you would see the paths of the night still lingering, like footprints in dew. You would see how each flower, each creature left behind a message, not shouted, not etched, but offered, carried, answered, and you would understand that even in darkness, even in uncertainty, something beautiful was always reaching, and something was always listening. Night does not begin all at once. It arrives like a memory, slowly, gently deepening by degrees. Shadows stretch, stars appear one by one, and the air cools as if the earth itself is breathing out the heat of the day. In this soft transition, as the world dims and hushes, something ancient stirs in the dark. A flutter, almost silent, a shimmer of a movement between leaf and moonbeam. The moth awakens, not with sound, but with instinct. It does not rush, it remembers. Though its body is fragile, dusted with scales, wings as thin as paper, it carries within it a map more enduring than stone. A memory written not in ink or words, but in patterns of scent and shadow. The moth does not need to be taught where to go. It knows. Even from the moment it unfurls from its cocoon, wings still damp and trembling, it begins to sense the shapes of its world. The direction of wind, the pulse of moonlight, the distant perfume of a flower that only opens when the stars are fully awake. This memory is not like ours. It is not made of names or faces, or moments framed in photographs. It is a memory of rhythm, of light gradients and thermal pockets, of nectar tasted seasons ago by ancestors it has never met. This is memory passed down not through story but through survival. Each moth is a continuation of a question answered long ago: how to find sweetness in the dark, how to find meaning without sight, how to listen to the air. When a moth flies, it does not simply move, it reads. Its wings flutter in a precise ballet, adjusting moment by moment to the tiniest changes in pressure and direction. But it is the antennae, those feathered filaments sprouting delicately from its head, that do the real remembering. Covered in sensory hairs, they are tuned to detect single molecules among millions. One molecule of jasmine in a sea of night air is enough to change the course of a moth's flight. One whiff of moonflower is enough to draw it across fields and forests. Scientists once believed moths flew without purpose, drawn randomly toward the brightest thing they saw. But we now know that moths are not wandering. They are following. They are tracking invisible trails, drawn with chemicals instead of chalk. They are searching for a scent they already know, one encoded in their body long before they ever took flight. This is not randomness. This is precision. This is memory held in the flutter of wings and the tilt of a head. There is a moth in Madagascar with a tongue longer than its body. It finds the star orchid, a bloom with a nectar chamber so deep no other pollinator can reach. For years, the orchid structure puzzled botanists. How could any creature possibly sip from such a distance? But the moth, born into this ecosystem, carries the answer. It unspools its tongue like a silken thread, reaching deep into the flower's core. There is no hesitation. The moth knew the bloom before it ever touched it. Their relationship predates both. It is a memory shared across time. Some moths migrate, travelling hundreds of miles by night, guided not by landmarks but by the pull of the earth itself. They read the magnetic field. They trace the scent of plants growing far away. And somehow they arrive, not just at a location, but at a moment, when the flowers open, when the air is right, when the exchange can happen. How they do this is still a mystery. But it happens night after night, year after year. It is memory written into motion. And there are smaller moths too, ones that never travel far. They live among the grasses, feeding from flowers close to the ground, hiding in folds of bark by day. Yet even these humble flyers carry an elegance in their navigation. They return to the same blooms, the same paths, tracing loops that look simple but are deeply informed by wind, warmth, and scent. Their world is a three-dimensional map, constantly changing, constantly felt, and still they remember. Not all moths are drawn to flowers. Some seek rotting fruit. Some search for water. Some are born not to feed at all, but to mate and die within a day. But even these moths, brief as their lives may be, follow patterns older than themselves. They know when to emerge. They know which plants to rest on, which leaves to lay eggs upon. Even the flutter of their wings sends out pheromones, carrying messages too quiet for us to hear, but unmistakable to others in the night. Moths are often overlooked. We see them as shadows, as dull cousins to butterflies. But there is a depth to their night flight that few creatures share. Where butterflies dance in sunbeams, moths write poetry in shadow. Where bees buzz with purpose, moths hum with patience. Their presence is not a performance. It is a promise that life continues even in darkness, that beauty exists even when no one sees. In the rainforest, moths feed at night on the flowers of cacao trees. Without them, the trees would not fruit. Without the fruit, no chocolate. What begins as a whisper of scent in a humid grove becomes, months later, a sweetness on human tongues. And yet we rarely thank the moth for this. We forget their part, but the moth does not ask to be remembered. It only asks to remember. It remembers the moment the flower opened, the curve of the petal, the temperature of the air, the scent carried on a low breeze. It stores this not in the brain as we do, but in the body, in the way its muscles turn, in the shape of its path, in the flutter that seems aimless but is not. Some call this instinct, others call it behaviour. But perhaps it is something softer, something older, a kind of wisdom with wings. Even in cities, even in places where flowers have vanished and lights pollute the dark, moths still fly. They circle porch lamps, confused but persistent. They find patches of garden where wildflowers still grow. They cling to tree trunks, waiting for the night to quiet. And when the right flower releases its call, they will know, they will answer, because something in them remembers. And so the night deepens. The stars shine above, cool and steady. A moth rises from a stem, brushing past blades of grass, slipping into air filled with unseen messages. Its wings do not shout. Its journey does not dazzle, but it moves forward, slow and certain, following a trail no human can see. And in that flight a history continues. A flower waits, a promise is kept, a memory is honoured, not by thought, not by word, but by flight. Let's drift deeper into the quiet places where moths carry their silent stories. The night stretches wide and slow, filled with stillness and the occasional ripple of wind brushing over treetops. In this hush, moths continue their wandering, not random but remembered. Each movement is part of a path traced by invisible hands, guided by a wisdom they never question. They fly not because they wonder what is out there, but because something in them already knows. The flower they seek, the tree they'll circle, the scent that will call them closer, it all belongs to a rhythm etched in their bodies, not learned but lived. The memory of moths is different from ours. It isn't held in photographs or lines of thought. It's written into their bones, their breath, their beating wings. A newly emerged moth, fresh from its chrysalis, doesn't need a map. It lifts into the air and instantly begins navigating the world with precision. Its antennae sweep the air like fine brushes, testing for the softest chemical hints of a familiar bloom. This is not learning through trial. This is inheritance. The air itself is not blank to them. It's a page already marked with signals, and their bodies are built to read it. Many of these signals come from flowers that bloom only at night. The relationships between moths and night-blooming plants are often so specific, so precise, that the absence of one means the disappearance of the other. Some orchids release scents meant for only one moth species. If that moth goes extinct, the flower's story ends too. This kind of partnership is not casual. It is devotion written over millennia. It means the moth must remember not just any scent, but the scent. It must know when to fly, how high, how far, and when to pause in mid-air to reach the bloom without ever landing. These are not tricks, they are knowledge passed in silence. In laboratories, scientists have observed that moths can be trained to associate certain scents with rewards, and they remember that association even after long periods of rest. But outside the lab, in the natural world, they already arrive equipped with preferences, tendencies, patterns of behaviour shaped by evolution. A moth raised without ever having tasted nectar from a moonflower will still fly straight toward its scent. The trail is old. The attraction is not new. The pull toward that bloom is a story already inside them, one they were born remembering. Some species of moths are able to detect scent trails even when wind is erratic or conditions are harsh. Their flight may seem zigzagged or aimless, but every shift and turn is a calculation, a way of homing in on the direction from which the scent becomes strongest. It's a dance across air currents, With each beat of their wings, they adjust, refining their direction. What looks like drifting is actually precision, practiced over millions of nights. This is how moths find a flower that might be miles away, hidden beneath canopies, open only briefly, releasing its fragrance in a slow pulse just before midnight. But moths remember more than just roots. They remember timing. Some moths emerge from the soil or from their cocoons on specific nights of the year, synced with lunar cycles, temperature changes, or plant blooming schedules. This is not a choice. It is a deep biological agreement between creature and environment. The flower opens, the moth arrives. The two events are part of the same sentence. One half does not exist without the other. And while their lives may be short, some lasting only a few days, moths carry out this mission with remarkable focus. They don't waste time, they don't hesitate. The memory they follow is urgent, but calm. Even the way they move through space is gentle, wings fanning slowly, quietly, designed not for speed but for grace. A moth hovers not to show off, but to listen more carefully to the chemical breath of the flower. And if the scent is right, if the message matches the one it has carried inside since birth, it extends its proboscis and drinks. In that moment, something larger is happening. The flower, having offered its nectar, coats the moth with pollen, tiny grains that cling to the scales of its body. The moth flies away, unaware of the gift it carries, but the next flower it visits will receive that pollen, and with it, a continuation of life. The moth does not need to understand the importance of this act. It only needs to remember the scent. Some of the most delicate moths are drawn to flowers that bloom for just a single night. These blooms wait all year for the right conditions, the right combination of temperature, moonlight and silence, to open their petals. If the moth is late, the flower will wither, unfulfilled. But it rarely is. These stories have been practiced so many times that they now unfold like breath. Each species moves in rhythm with its partner, trusting that what was true before will be true again. And still, moths adapt. If a certain bloom is delayed due to changing climate patterns, or if a forest path is blocked, the moth will search for the next signal. They are not lost easily. Their memory is not rigid. It bends like their flight, weaving, adjusting, learning without language. Even when flowers disappear from a region, moths have been observed shifting their preferences to similar scents in new plants. They do not mourn, they move forward. They remember differently, but they remember nonetheless. In some cultures, moths are seen as symbols of mystery, of transformation, of unseen truths. They arrive quietly, move without sound, and vanish before dawn. But to the ecosystems they inhabit, moths are not symbols. They are essential workers in the dark and keepers of balance, bridges between blooms. Their memory shapes the path of fruit and seed, the cycle of forests, the flavour of the plants we eat. Without moths, entire plant lineages would end. Orchids would fade, cactus blooms would go unvisited, evening primroses would bloom in vain. And in that silence the chain would begin to break. Less fruit, fewer seeds, slower regrowth. What the moth remembers, the world depends on, and still it asks for nothing. It does not seek our attention. It does not need light. It does not care if it is seen. It only cares that the flower is there, that the scent still rises, that the trail remains in the air long enough to follow. So as you walk through the night, beneath stars or city lamps, pause for a moment. Look up or look low, where the leaves part. You may see a small shape fluttering soft and unhurried. It will not stay long, but as it passes, know that it carries something older than thought. It carries a map. It carries a memory. It carries the story of how to find sweetness in the dark. And it remembers for all of us. The night begins to soften at its edges, as if the darkness itself is exhaling. Stars retreat behind a curtain of pale blue, and a silver light pools low on the horizon. Still, the air holds the memory of all that moved within it. The flutter of wings, the delicate touch of antennae, the silent passage of moths tracing their secret paths through gardens and forests. The blooms that opened in darkness are beginning to close now, their petals folding gently like pages in a well-read book. And as they fade from view, the story of their night is carried forward, imprinted on the wings of the moths who visited them. Those wings, so fragile in appearance, are tapestries of memory. Not in the way we often imagine memory, not held in names or images or spoken recollections, but in a deeper, older way. They are coated in fine scales, delicate as dust, which brush against stamen and stigma, gathering grains of pollen too small to see. And within each scale is the record of a journey, a scent detected, a bloom visited, a moment of stillness midair. The moth remembers not through thought, but through sensation, through rhythm, through scent, through the magnetic pulse of the earth beneath it and the wind pressing against its face. In that soft, glowing hour before dawn, when shadows still stretch long across the land and dew begins to settle on leaves, the last of the night's moths return to their resting places. Some find shelter beneath bark, others curl beneath wide leaves, wings tucked tight, antennae laid flat. Their work is done for now, but their imprint remains. The trails they followed, the flowers they visited, the pollen they carried, these have changed the world in small, invisible ways. A fruit will form here, a seed will swell there. Life, in its quietest form, will move forward. And somewhere unseen by us, the flower remembers too. It remembers the weight of the visitor that hovered above it, the soft brush of wings, the gentle dip of the proboscis, the exchange of sweetness for continuity. That moment, though fleeting, was everything. The bloom had waited days, weeks, perhaps even years for that exact hour, for that exact scent to find it. It offered itself completely, and the moth responded. No audience, no ceremony, just a perfect rhythm, struck and held for an instant, then gone. The beauty of the moth's memory lies in its simplicity. It doesn't question, it doesn't hold on, it simply continues. It flies toward what calls it. It finds what waits for it, and then it rests. There is something deeply calming in that, something ancient and true. We, with our tangled thoughts and endless distractions, often long for purpose and clarity. But the moth shows us that it is possible to live by trust alone, to let the night guide you, to let the air speak to you, to follow a fragrance through the dark and believe it will lead you somewhere meaningful. And it does. Time and again, it does. Even in landscapes fractured by roads and light, even in gardens shrunken to strips of wildflowers, the moth still finds its way. It remembers in the dark what has been lost in the day, a path, a scent, a bloom that belongs to it, and in returning it repairs what might have been forgotten. In mountainous regions there are moths that rise through elevations as the season warms, following the bloom line of alpine flowers. They remember not just where, but when. A week too soon and the buds remain closed. A week too late and the petals have fallen. But they arrive on time. Guided by moonlight and wind, they find the blossoms tucked between stones and snowmelt, drink deeply, and then move on, their bodies carrying pollen like promises to the next ridge, the next bloom, the next evening sky. Even in the hottest deserts, moths remember the scent of night-blooming cacti. When the sun falls and the air cools enough for life to stir, they emerge from crevices in the rocks and drift low over sand and thorn, following a trail that curls like smoke through the stillness. The cactus flower, open only for a single night, trusts the moth to come. It releases its fragrance into a world so dry and vast it seems impossible anything will hear it. But the moth does. Again and again it does. This is not just biology. It is not just behavior. It is a form of connection. The moth and the flower are partners in something bigger than themselves. Their movements, though small and solitary, ripple through entire ecosystems. Where moths fly, fruit follows. Where fruit forms, animals feed. Where seeds drop, forests grow. And it all begins with a memory carried on the wind. There are thousands of species of moths, each with its own pattern, its own scent preferences, its own favoured flowers. Some are no larger than a fingernail. Others span the width of 2 outstretched hands. Some live only a few days, others last weeks. But all in their own way remember. They return to the same fields, they follow the same trails. They echo the choices of ancestors they never knew. Each flutter of their wings is both new and old, unique and familiar. A dance rehearsed across generations. And what of the moths we see fluttering near our windows, circling porch lights with trembling wings? They are not lost. They are confused by the lights we have created, lights that mimic the moon, yet offer no flower, no scent, no fulfillment. Still they search, still they try. Even in error, their motion is guided by memory. If we turn off the lights, if we let the night be dark again, They will return to their true path. The trail is not gone, it is simply waiting. To honour the memory of moths is to allow the night to speak again. It is to grow the flowers that call to them, to let jasmine bloom in quiet corners, to plant moonflowers that open when the world falls asleep. It is to dim the lights that drown their trails, to preserve the wild spaces where they rest and rise. These small actions, barely noticed by most, are how we keep the story going, because what the moth remembers is not just its own survival. It remembers how to help the world grow. It remembers the roots that lead to new life. It remembers the language of the unseen. And in doing so, it teaches us that not all knowledge is spoken, that not all stories are written, that some of the most essential truths are carried by wings in the night, brushing past us quietly, asking nothing in return but the space to continue. And as the first rays of sun slip through the trees, turning the dew to gold, the last moth finds its resting place. Its wings fold, its body stills, but its journey is not over. It will rise again, and when the stars return, it will remember. There are some lights that do not blaze. They do not flicker like candles or gleam like stars. They do not ask to be noticed. Instead, they wait beneath the surface, hidden beneath layers of petal and silence, pulsing gently like breath. These are the lights that live inside flowers, subtle and quiet, not for us, but for those who come to visit in the stillness of night. This is the glow beneath the petals, the secret illumination of nature, soft as moonlight and older than memory. In the forest under the thick green canopy, the sun disappears long before the sky grows dark. The light that reaches the forest floor is soft and scattered, filtered through leaves like coloured glass, and here, where shadows begin their slow ascent before dusk, certain flowers begin to change. They do not open with fanfare, they do not call attention to themselves. Instead, they begin to glow, not in the way a lamp glows, not in the sharp light of human invention, but in the way a pearl glows beneath water, the way heat rises off stones at twilight, the way a memory lingers on skin after touch. This glow is made not of fire or flame, but of chemistry, reactions so small, so precise, that they remain invisible to most eyes. But to the ones who are meant to see it, it shines like a signpost. Bioluminescence is rare in plants, but fluorescence, the ability of petals to absorb light and re-emit it at a different wavelength, is surprisingly common, especially under the veil of night. Ultraviolet light, present even after sunset in trace amounts, strikes the surface of certain flowers and causes them to shimmer with a faint halo. To moths, bats and beetles with vision attuned to these wavelengths, the flowers do not simply sit still in the dark. They glow like beacons, each one marked with signals invisible to the human eye. Some petals have patterns that only reveal themselves under moonlight or starlight, ultraviolet guides that lead the pollinator directly to the nectar source. These patterns are like painted runes, delicate road maps etched in pigment and protein. A hawk moth, flying low over a meadow, can see what we cannot. Blooms lit from within, each one humming with its own quiet signal. The moth follows these lights not because they are the brightest, but because they are the truest. They have never lied. They always mean nectar. They always mean home. Even in the harshest environments, deserts where the sun scorches by day and the cold bites by night, there are flowers that glow softly after sundown. Cactus blooms, open for just a few hours, shimmer faintly in the dark. Their petals, often pale or white, catch what little light the moon offers and reflect it back with a quiet sheen. These aren't tricks, they are invitations, not loud, not urgent, just steady and certain. To approach one is to feel chosen. In the tropics, deep in the understory where the air is thick and the dark comes early, some orchids bloom with petals that seem to hold their own light. Not enough to light the ground beneath them, but enough to stand out in a world where most things vanish into shadow. These orchids release their scent in time with their glow, sinking fragrance and luminescence into one irresistible message. To the moth, this is not just a flower. It is a lighthouse, a promise. Even more wondrous are the times when the glow comes not from the flower itself, but from those who visit it. Some beetles carry a faint bioluminescent shine, a gentle glimmer that hovers just above the petal. They move from bloom to bloom, brushing pollen from one glow to the next, like stars dancing between worlds. In some ecosystems, certain fungi near the base of flowering plants emit greenish light, marking the path to the blooms above. This is not coincidence, it is collaboration. It is the earth finding ways to light its own breath. And yet, to the human eye, this glow is often missed. We are drawn to daylight, to bright colours and bold patterns. We rarely see what happens when the light softens, but if we stayed a little longer, if we let our eyes adjust to the dark instead of running from it, we might begin to notice it. A subtle shimmer on the edge of a petal, a glow resting just beneath the surface. We might feel it before we see it. The way the air changes, the way a flower seems to pulse ever so slightly, not with movement, but with presence. Scientists have only begun to understand the full extent of floral fluorescence. Using special cameras, they've captured images of blooms under UV light, revealing intricate shapes and guides invisible during the day. These markings are not decoration, they are function. They are meant for the eyes of others, not ours. Pollinators see a different world, one mapped not by brightness, but by contrast, not by colour, but by glow. And in this world every petal tells a story. The outer edges may remain still and soft, but the centre, where the nectar lies, often glows brighter. A subtle invitation, a quiet direction, a way of saying, come closer, come now, this is the right moment. And the creatures who move in this world understand it instantly. They don't need to be taught. Their eyes are made for it. Their minds are tuned to the rhythm of light that most never see. There's a gentleness to this kind of communication. No urgency, no pressure, just a message offered, held in place like a candle behind glass. The glow does not shout, it waits. And the waiting itself is part of the message, a sign of trust, a gesture of grace. Even in human spaces, cultivated gardens, overgrown parks, the untended corners of backyards, the glow still happens. Moonflowers, 4 o'clocks, evening primroses, all carry petals that reflect and refract the low light of dusk. To us they may appear pale or ordinary, but to a passing pollinator they blaze like invitations in the dark. If we were to kneel beside them just before night takes hold and look closely, not with expectation but with patience, we might begin to sense it. That something quiet is unfolding, that something is reaching outward, asking nothing more than to be seen. And that is what this glow beneath the petals truly is, a gesture, a reaching, a presence, not desperate, not demanding, just sure, just there, waiting, glowing, breathing, as night deepens and the creatures of the day rest in their nests and burrows. The ones who move by scent and shimmer begin their journeys. They follow not roads, but reflections. They trace a world lit by softness, by warmth, by the faintest pulses of colour beneath colour. To follow the glow is to find food, to find rest, to find purpose, and to be part of a story told again and again, flower by flower, wing by wing, night after night. And when dawn comes, when the sun floods the land and colour returns in ways our eyes understand, the glow will vanish. It will not resist the morning. It will simply recede, not because it is weak, but because it knows when its work is done. It knows the night, it trusts the dark, and it will return. The glow beneath the petals is not an accident. It is a language, carefully evolved, shaped by the needs of the night and the eyes that travel through it. Though it remains invisible to us, cloaked in wavelengths we cannot see, it shines like a soft constellation to those who are born into its spectrum. Every bloom becomes a signal, every pulse of light, a phrase in a sentence passed silently between flower and flyer. And across forests, deserts, fields and gardens, these quiet conversations unfold under moonlight, uninterrupted by noise, unspoiled by spectacle. To understand this world is to accept that not all messages are meant for us. The flowers that emit ultraviolet reflections, the blooms that glow more intensely in the presence of moths, the petals that shine only when brushed by warm, humid air, they're engaged in dialogues older than language. A flower may appear white to our eyes, but to a bat it might glow with rings and streaks and dots, each marking a direction, each design whispering here, this way, just a little closer. In many flowers, the glow is strongest not at the edges, but at the centre, where nectar pools and pollen waits. This is no coincidence. These fluorescence patterns are evolutionary guides, pointing nocturnal pollinators toward the reward. Unlike bright colours, which attract bees and birds in daylight, these signals are tuned for the night. They rely on faint ultraviolet reflections, scattered starlight, or the internal chemistry of the petals themselves, compounds that absorb and re-emit energy in quiet pulses, like breath in a sleeping chest. Some species have taken this design even further. The flowers of certain night-blooming lilies, for example, contain pigments that shift under different wavelengths. A moth approaching under a canopy sees one set of cues, another moth, flying under open sky, sees another. This allows the flower to communicate with different pollinators at different times, across different moods of night. It is not just beauty, it is adaptability woven into softness. In dense tropical forests, many flowering vines climb high into the canopy to catch whatever light the moon offers. Their blooms, often waxy and pale, are shaped not just to reflect light, but to hold it, their surfaces engineered by nature to scatter photons across the petal's surface. This creates the illusion of glow, even when no bioluminescence is present. These flowers don't need to shine on their own, they only need to echo the sky. To a pollinator flying beneath the branches, the bloom is a lantern. Not bright but clear, not loud but confident. Even more remarkable are the flowers that respond to touch. Some researchers have found that certain petals glow more intensely after being brushed by a wing or leg, the physical contact stimulating brief chemical changes that affect how the flower refracts light. In this way, each visitor leaves behind a trace, not just pollen, but a glow, a momentary signature, marking that the bloom has been visited. Other pollinators, sensing the change, may move on, saving energy, trusting that another flower waits with untouched nectar. It is a subtle coordination, one that increases efficiency for all involved. There are even cases where the glow acts as a timekeeper. In the Sonoran Desert, for instance, some cactus flowers emit a stronger ultraviolet reflection during the early hours of night, slowly fading as dawn approaches. This helps guide moths and bats when the flowers are most receptive to pollination. And as the glow fades, the message is clear. Not now, not today, rest, return later. The bloom is sleeping. The glow beneath the petals is also tied to fragrance. The same molecular structures that cause certain petals to fluoresce are often involved in producing the scents that attract pollinators. In this way, the glow and the aroma are part of the same message, one visible, the other carried by wind. Together they create a full experience, a sensory path that calls across the night. Come drink, come land, come carry. Some night-blooming flowers, like the queen of the night cactus, release their scent in short, strong bursts while their petals shine with a faint bluish hue in the ultraviolet range. These emissions are timed with remarkable precision, strongest during the first hours after blooming, then tapering as the flower begins to wither. In a single night, the plant gives everything it has: glow, scent, nectar, pollen. And in exchange, it asks only to be remembered by one creature, just one, who will carry its future forward. And it is remembered. Hawk moths return year after year, generation after generation, tracing paths they've never flown before, finding flowers they've never seen, guided not by sight alone, but by the harmony of scent and glow, memory and air. Their wings beat softly in the dark, creating a breeze that lifts the scent upward, stirs the light across the petal, reveals the bloom in full invitation. And when they hover, they do so in stillness, a perfect pause, suspended between hunger and fulfillment. In that moment, flower and moth become part of the same breath. The glow beneath the petals has also shaped the evolution of pollinators themselves. Moths and bats have developed eyes sensitive to low light and ultraviolet contrast, antennae that detect the faintest change in scent chemistry, and behaviours tuned to the rhythms of flowering cycles. In turn, the plants have refined their petals, adjusted their pigments, and timed their blooms to match. It is not a one-sided relationship. It is a conversation, a negotiation, a shared dream passed across the veil of night. Even in places where light pollution spills across the land, some of these signals endure. Moonflowers bloom in cities. Jasmine glows on balconies. Pollinators navigate the chaos of artificial lights to find their way to glowing petals tucked between bricks and concrete. It is not easy, but it still happens. The signal may be dimmed, but the memory remains. And where the message survives, the relationship continues. In this, there is something profoundly hopeful. The idea that even in a world filled with noise and interference, soft signals still find their receivers. That a message whispered beneath a petal can travel through the air, across darkness into the senses of a creature born to understand it. That glow and scent and rhythm, no matter how quiet, are never wasted when they are sent with trust. So the flowers continue to bloom, they continue to glow, they continue to scent the night, even when no eye is watching, no nose is sniffing, no wing is nearby, because this is their way, to offer, to shine, to wait, to give their whole selves to a moment that may never come, or may come unexpectedly, carried on wings they never see. And when the night ends, when the sun returns and the glow fades, the petals do not mourn. They close, they rest. And in the folds of their closing, the light still lingers, not for us to see, but for the world to feel. Because what glows beneath the petals is not just chemistry, it is faith. Dawn begins its slow arrival, pressing softly against the edges of the world. The air is still cool, still holding the scent of blossoms that bloomed in darkness. The petals that glowed through the night are beginning to dim, folding inward like hands in prayer. What they offered has been given, what they called for has arrived, and now the glow beneath the petals recedes not in defeat, but in fulfillment. It has done what it was meant to do, to beckon without sound, to shine without fire, to guide without force. Across meadows and forests and hillsides the signs of night's work are subtle. A fruit beginning to swell, a stamen brushed clean of its pollen, a moth's wing still dusted with the evidence of its midnight visits. These are the footprints left behind by light invisible to most. The traces of a system so delicate, so quiet, that it might be missed entirely if not for what it builds over time, fruit, seed, life continuing. The glow beneath the petals was never meant to be the final scene. It was only the invitation, the beginning of the next chapter. Some of the creatures that followed that glow now rest in silence. The moth has curled beneath a leaf, its wings folded, its journey complete until the darkness returns. The beetle, having followed both scent and shimmer, has found its way back into soil, its task carried out in humble secrecy. And the flowers, those patient emitters of unseen light, soften into stillness. They do not resist the turning of time. Their work, though brief, was complete. The pulse of their petals slows. The chemistry inside them changes. The light fades from their surfaces like breath from a mirror. But even in this fading there is continuity. The message was passed. A grain of pollen moved from one bloom to another. A signal crossed a distance once empty. The quiet flash beneath the petal became a map, a gesture, a link. The glow was never for decoration, it was never for beauty alone. It was for life, gentle, invisible, persistent life. In some parts of the world, scientists have begun using ultraviolet cameras to track how long these floral signals remain visible after dawn. They have found that in the minutes before full sunlight, there exists a liminal period, a moment when both the glow and the daylight coexist. This brief overlap is when certain diurnal creatures may still catch glimpses of what the night has left behind. Bees arriving early may stumble upon flowers still holding their fluorescence, and though the bee doesn't see what the moth saw, it still benefits from the exchange, continuing the cycle in the daylight hours. The glow may vanish, but the collaboration lingers. Elsewhere, in mountain valleys and rainforest understories, there are plants that evolve to glow in multiple ways, not just through UV reflection, but through actual bioluminescence. Their flowers emit a faint green or blue light through chemical reactions inside their cells independent of sunlight. These are the rarest blooms, glowing even in the absence of external cues. They are not common, but they exist, and their presence reminds us that the world still carries surprises not yet understood, that there are forms of light still blooming in corners untouched by study, untouched by sight. These living lamps attract beetles, small moths, and even curious birds that hunt at dawn. The glow they give is faint, too faint for the human eye in daylight, but brilliant in the deep dark. The mechanisms that power their light involve luciferin and oxygen, much like the fireflies that flash through summer meadows. But while fireflies dance in moving pulses, these flowers hold a steady radiance, a constant heartbeat of invitation. Some indigenous cultures speak of these glowing blooms as the dreams of the earth made visible. They tell stories of spirits who hide in petals, guiding wanderers in the night. While science seeks to explain their chemistry, these tales offer another kind of truth, that something glowing quietly in the dark may be both real and sacred. not because of how much light it gives, but because of what it gives it to. And perhaps this is the heart of the matter. The glow beneath the petals was never for the world at large. It was never about brilliance or spectacle. It was always meant for one visitor at a time, one moth, one bat, one beetle. That was enough. That was everything. The flower did not need to be seen by all, it only needed to be answered. And it was, night after night, season after season. Over years, over decades, the glow sent out its signal, and something always came. Not always the same creature, not always at the same hour, but always something, because in the night, trust runs deep. The bloom trusts that its partner will return. The partner trusts that the glow will guide. They find each other not by promise, but by practice. Even now, as morning spreads across the land, that promise is being renewed. Beneath the surface, new buds prepare. Their petals are not yet open, their light not yet lit, but soon they will be. They are waiting for night, for stillness, for the quiet canvas on which they will draw their message again. And when they do, they will not shout, they will not rush, they will glow softly, steadily, the way their ancestors did. The way their purpose was shaped. The pollinators will come again. They will follow scent, pattern, memory, warmth. They will see what we do not see. They will arrive without fanfare, hovering, touching, feeding, and in doing so they will pass on the future. And when they rest, the flowers will close. Their glow will end, but not their meaning, because the glow beneath the petals is more than light. It is part of the earth's breath, part of the secret songs sung between species in silence, part of the way the world whispers forward. So tonight, when the sky darkens and the stars begin to sharpen, know that somewhere a flower is beginning to open. Its glow is faint. It is not for you, but you may see it if you sit still, if you let the darkness wrap around you, if you let your eyes adjust and your breath quiet. You may see it, the gentlest shimmer, the quietest light, and whether you do or not, it will still shine, it will still offer, because that's what the glow beneath the petals is, a gift, one that expects nothing, one that never stops. There is a sweetness that carries direction, a taste that guides, a signal so delicate and pure that it does not speak, but still it leads. This is nectar, not just food, not just reward, but a compass for the night-bound traveller. For the creatures who wake when the stars rise, nectar is more than nourishment. It is instruction. It tells them where to go, when to arrive, how to return. In its fragrance and chemistry and quiet pulse, it draws paths across darkness, maps across air. Nectar becomes a way through the unknown. Nectar becomes a compass. In the deep hush of a nighttime meadow, as the air settles and the last heat of the day slips away, flowers open with slow, certain gestures. Their petals unfurl not toward the sun, but toward the moon, toward the cooler breeze, toward the stillness. And inside each bloom, deep within its folds, the nectar begins to rise. It is not poured or spilled. It gathers gently, called forth by processes we do not see. Sugars drawn from light long gone, water pulled from roots below, scent crafted from oils and memory. It forms in silence, pooling just enough to tempt, to reward, to guide. The moths lift from their hiding places and begin their flight. They do not fly aimlessly. They follow the trail of scent, not always to the flower itself, but to the promise of what lies inside. The scent of nectar is different from the scent of the bloom. It carries a more specific message, more refined, more focused. While a flower might announce its presence to the world, nectar speaks in whispers, addressed only to those who understand its tone. And those who understand do not hesitate. They follow. Hawk moths, with their long tongues curled tight like delicate scrolls, unfurl them only when the scent is right. Their antennae guide them through the night, adjusting to faint changes in direction, temperature, and humidity. They do not need sight to find their way. They need familiarity, the signature of a bloom they've visited before, or the ancestral memory of one shaped like home. They move from one bloom to the next, not in lines, but in arcs and spirals, sketching maps across the dark drawn by sugar-laced air. To them, nectar is not a prize, it is a signal, a point of orientation. In the dense jungle where vines twist across vines and darkness settles before the sky turns black, bats begin to stir. Their wings stretch, their bodies lift, and they dive into a world ruled by sound and scent. Nectar is not just energy for these creatures, it is a point of return. A flower that offers sweet sustenance one night will often do so again the next. Bats remember this. Their brains map the forest not by shape but by flavour. A blooming banana plant here, a night-opening baobab there. Each stop becomes a part of a path, and the nectar at each teaches them the shape of their world. And that nectar, thin, clear, lightly perfumed, is not passive. It adjusts. Some flowers change the concentration of their sugars as the night passes. At first, the nectar may be rich and thick, a bold offering to call in early visitors. Later it may thin, guiding creatures onward, encouraging movement, distribution, continuation. The taste changes slightly, the message shifts. It is not always the strongest sweetness that draws. Sometimes it is the memory of sweetness, the trail left behind, that compels the next step. Certain flowers even alter their nectar chemistry depending on who visits them. Studies have shown that after being visited by a bee or bird or bat, some flowers adjust their nectar content, changing sugar ratios, reducing volume, or increasing scent to attract different pollinators. These are conversations written not in sound, but in solution. The flower listens through touch. It responds through taste. The nectar becomes the next line in a story passed from one body to another. In alpine meadows, where the growing season is short and the cold comes quickly, nectar has to work fast. Flowers there produce smaller quantities, but at higher sugar concentrations, giving quick energy to fast-moving butterflies and moths. These insects learn quickly which blooms are worth the visit. They do not linger long, but their paths are precise. Nectar marks the direction. The air becomes a map. Some moths will visit hundreds of flowers in a single night, drawing tiny sips each time. And yet they rarely revisit a bloom. They remember. The last taste remains on their tongue, the last pattern in their mind. Their flight becomes a loop, looping not through space but through memory. The flower's location, the angle of approach, the warmth of the petal, the sweetness of what was offered. These things become a compass as clear as any star, and even for smaller creatures, ants, beetles, tiny flies, nectar provides orientation. Some ants follow trails marked by floral sugars evaporating on leaves. Others are drawn to the residual stickiness left behind by nocturnal feeders. Beetles climb stems not because they see a bloom, but because they smell the trace of sugar in the air. They arrive slowly, but they arrive with certainty. The flower may not glow, it may not sing, but the nectar speaks. It tells them they are close. This communication is not always peaceful. Sometimes too many creatures seek the same sweetness. Some take more than they give. Some chew through petals, steal nectar without pollinating, vanish into the dark without carrying a single grain of pollen. But even this is part of the balance. Flowers learn. Some produce structures that exclude certain visitors. Others change the timing of their nectar release to match only those they trust. Even in silence, boundaries are drawn, and still nectar continues to guide. In deserts where flowers bloom only a few nights each year, bats remember where to go even after months of absence. In forests where blooms shift from canopy to floor, moths adjust their flight height to match the trail of scent. In gardens left untouched, bees return at dusk for one last sip before the cool settles in. The compass is not always magnetic. It is not always visual. Sometimes it is tasted, and there are moments when nectar becomes memory. When the scent of a flower visited once, long ago in another field beneath another moon, reappears on the wind. The moth tilts slightly, the bat turns back. Something in the sweetness calls them home. For those of us who move mostly by sight and sound, it can be hard to imagine this, that the world could be shaped by flavour, by molecules drifting on breeze, that life could be organised not around voice or vision, but around sweetness. And yet it is. Entire migrations, entire food chains, entire ecosystems, all following paths drawn by nectar. To taste is to orient, to feed is to remember, and to follow sweetness through the dark is to trust that somewhere ahead another flower waits, another petal opens, another message is being written in sugar and scent, and the journey will continue. Because for those who move through the night with open wings and open senses, nectar is more than sustenance. It is direction, it is memory, it is the path forward. Let us move deeper into this sweet and silent world, where nectar is not only tasted but trusted, a compass spun from sugar and scent, from memory and motion. As the night stretches across hills and valleys, as petals open and offer their silent invitations, nectar begins its unseen work. It does not call out, it does not glow with colour, but it carries an ancient rhythm, one that guides, one that binds. In this realm, direction is not marked by signposts or stars, but by a flavour lingering on the air, a trace on the tongue, a warmth left behind at the centre of a bloom. Beneath a canopy of darkened leaves, a bat dips low over a cluster of night-blooming flowers. The air is rich with perfume, but more than scent draws it in. The bat has flown this path before. The sweetness of the nectar, its texture, its temperature, the shape of the blossom that held it. All these details live inside the bat's body like remembered songs. It does not navigate by sight, it navigates by recognition, following the flavour of the night as if it were a trail of lights laid out on velvet. One taste leads to the next, one bloom links to another, and through this, the bat builds a map not of places, but of experiences. Even the smallest moths do this. Hovering just inches above ground, they twist and turn in arcs that seem random to us but are anything but. Each shift of wing, each flutter of a scent, is informed by taste remembered. Not long ago the moth touched a flower and drank. Now, with that sweetness still wet on its curled tongue, it searches for another just like it. Not identical, perhaps, but similar enough. Nectar does not only guide outward, it draws a circle inward too, a loop of learning, of preference, of paths carved by desire and reward. Flowers too remember. Though they do not move, they adjust with extraordinary subtlety. A bloom that has been visited many times may begin to shift its nectar production. Less sugar, less scent, a gentle signal to pollinators. Move on, try another. This isn't unkindness, it's balance. The flower gives, but it must also conserve. Its goal is not just to nourish, but to ensure its pollen is carried far and wide. If the same visitor returns again and again to the same bloom, the message is not spread, so the nectar shifts, the flavour fades, the compass resets. In some species, nectar contains secondary compounds, tiny chemical messages that influence behaviour. A bit of caffeine here, a trace of nicotine there, not enough to harm but enough to alter perception, to encourage memory, to reinforce preference. Bees given caffeinated nectar, for instance, remember the flower's scent more clearly. They return with greater purpose, and so the plant ensures its visitors don't forget. Nectar becomes not only a direction but a lesson, a way to say, come back, choose me again. In meadows where dozens of species bloom together, these differences matter. Each flower must set itself apart. One releases nectar earlier in the evening, another scents the air more heavily just before midnight. One is richer, one is lighter. These variations are not mistakes, they are strategies. Each nectar profile creates its own compass point, its own gravitational pull, and the pollinators, with their delicate tongues and highly tuned senses, respond accordingly. They build their roots bloom by bloom, guided by these subtle distinctions. Sometimes the nectar points the way not to just one flower, but to a whole population. A moth might visit a bloom at the edge of a field, then follow a faint sweet breeze toward a second, then a third, each visit reinforcing the direction. In this way, nectar forms corridors, invisible roads that weave through the night. These paths are not fixed. They change with weather, with time, with the growth of new blooms. But for those who follow them, the routes are as clear as trails marked in stone. In tropical forests, nectar becomes a way to coordinate across species. A bat may feed on a banana flower at dusk, then switch to a night-opening ceiba tree hours later, each destination defined by when the nectar becomes available. This staggered offering ensures that different plants are visited in turn, and that the pollinator never lacks for food. Nectar synchronizes the night. It spaces out the movement, gently guiding mouths and wings and fur from one bloom to the next. The forest breathes in rhythms shaped by sweetness. Even the air itself becomes part of this compass. Warm currents rising from the earth carry nectar's scent further, lifting it through branches and across hillsides. Cool breezes pin it close to the ground. A skilled pollinator learns not just to detect these signals, but to read them. A change in temperature, a shift in wind, these become part of the message. The nectar is not static. It moves, it drifts, it reaches. There are creatures who can detect the smallest fluctuations in sugar concentration, who know not just that nectar is present, but how strong it is, how fresh. This sensitivity is not a luxury, it is survival. In a world filled with options, every decision must count. Every wing beat uses energy, every pause risks exposure. To fly toward a bloom that yields nothing is to lose more than time, and so nectar refines itself. It must offer enough to draw attention, but not so much as to waste. It must say here, but not stay too long. It must be both invitation and instruction. For some flowers, nectar is hidden deep within complex shapes, spurs, tubes, folds. Only certain visitors can reach it. These are not barriers, they are filters. The nectar calls to one kind of tongue, one kind of beak, one kind of touch. It ensures that the pollen is carried by the right hands or wings to the right destination. Even the distance a pollinator must travel within a flower, the way its body brushes against specific parts, is choreographed by the location of nectar. Nothing is wasted. Nothing is random. And yet, despite all this specificity, the world that nectar shapes is one of openness. A moth may find a new flower tonight, one it has never tasted before. A bat may change its route after a storm alters the wind. A flower may receive a visitor it was not designed for and still give, and still be answered. Nectar is precise, but it is not rigid. It creates paths, but it does not confine. It is a compass, yes, but one that allows for exploration, for discovery, for new patterns to form. Perhaps this is what makes it so powerful, that something so small, so silent, so invisible to the eye, can shape so much movement, so much memory. That a drop of sweetness in the centre of a petal can guide a creature across a valley, can ensure a tree will fruit, can tie together species that have never seen one another, but depend on each other completely. Nectar is not only a reward, it is the message, the reason, the way. And in the hush between dusk and dawn, when the world leans into shadow and scent, it becomes clear the night is not lost, it is led, not by light but by flavour, not by signs but by trust. Nectar tells the night where to go, and the night listens. The sky begins to pale at the edges, and still the nectar lingers, not just in the hearts of flowers, but in the minds of those who followed it through the night. The moth glides lower, wings quiet and worn, its body marked with the pollen of blooms now closed. A bat returns to its roost, the taste of sweetness still humming on its tongue. The petals begin to fold inward, their task fulfilled, their scent fading into the morning air, but the compass they created remains, drawn in invisible threads across the landscape and traced by memory, etched into the bodies of those who drank and flew and answered the call. Nectar has done what it was meant to do. It has guided, it has connected, it has sustained. Not through force or command, but through offering, through gentle persuasion, through flavour. The pollinators who navigated the night did not rely on map or landmark, but on molecules drifting in the breeze, on flavours remembered not with thought, but with instinct. Their world is one of orientation through presence, a knowing that arises from tasting, from touching, from movement through invisible gradients of sweetness. And even now, as the light sharpens and the sky turns from blue to gold, the patterns remain. Not for us to see, perhaps, but for the land to remember. A path of flowers pollinated, a trail of fruit beginning to swell, a loop of interaction closed for now, but ready to begin again when the darkness returns. This cycle is not rushed. It is never forced. Nectar moves at the pace of trust, at the speed of opening. It gives and waits. It points the way and then it rests. In gardens where moonflowers bloom and jasmine breathes into the wind, nectar is the silent centre of a story that unfolds night after night. The bees may take their share by day, but it is the creatures of the dusk who map their world with taste. A moth's flight seems erratic to human eyes, but every turn is purposeful, every circle is an answer to the last flavour it found. It loops back not in confusion but in calibration. It is aligning with the trail, refining its course. It is remembering not just where it has been, but where the nectar told it to go next. In deserts where life is scarce and the air is thin, nectar becomes more than guidance, it becomes agreement. Bats and flowers depend on one another so completely that the loss of one means the unravelling of the other. A cactus may wait all year to bloom. When it does, it offers nectar rich and deep, held in thick, waxy blooms designed to resist evaporation and hold scent. The bat, in turn, remembers, not in words, not even in thought, but in flight, in hunger, in habit carved by generations of return. The flower glows faintly in the moonlight. The bat arrives. The compass closes its loop. Even in cool mountain valleys, where alpine flowers must rush to bloom and be pollinated before the snow returns, nectar plays its part. Short-lived butterflies and hummingbirds race through bursts of colour, but the moths, quiet and steady, trace their own slow spirals. The flowers adjust, opening at dusk, offering sweetness that does not freeze too quickly, making each drop count. The nectar points the way through these brief windows of life, keeping the rhythm steady in a place where time is short. And there are places still wilder, where nectar not only guides, but teaches. In tropical forests, where layers of life press upon one another in shade and heat and scent, some flowers change the flavour of their nectar, depending on who last visited. A certain moth may leave behind a trace, a chemical echo in the air or on the petal. The next visitor, tasting the altered sweetness, may respond differently, may linger, may move on. These small variations become part of the message, shaping not just who visits, but how and when. Nectar evolves, not only as a gift, but as a form of memory carried in solution. Pollinators too learn from these experiences. They grow more precise with each night, refining their routes, favouring the blooms that gave the best reward, avoiding those that offered little. This learning is passed on not by story or instruction, but by success. Those who remember where the sweetness was are more likely to return to it. Over time, whole generations form patterns, trails across open spaces that begin to resemble highways of taste and scent and habit. These paths may shift with season and weather, but their roots run deep. And so nectar becomes more than a destination. It becomes a system, an architecture of motion held together by flavour. What seems like wandering is in fact a structured dance, one bloom leading to another, one night leading to the next, each drop of nectar guiding the way. The pollinators are not lost. They are in conversation, with the flowers, with the air, with the land that feeds them, and the blooms that open for them alone. Sometimes the guidance is so strong that creatures return even after long absence. A butterfly migrates thousands of miles and finds the same patch of flowers its ancestors knew. A moth reappears after a year underground and seeks out the plant it fed from in its larval days. These are not coincidences, they are continuities. The nectar waited, and the body remembered. And in this shared remembering, ecosystems are built. Trees grow because a pollinator followed a path marked in sugar. Fruits ripen because nectar led a creature to the right bloom at the right hour. Seeds are carried because sweetness called something forward. Entire landscapes shift because of what the night carried on its breath. And as the final shadows of the night slip away, as the flowers close and the air warms, and the light erases the paths we cannot see, the compass of nectar remains intact. It may not glow in daylight, it may not call to us, but it waits. It waits beneath the petals, it waits in the memory of those who tasted and moved and carried. It waits in the seeds that fall, in the roots that dig deep, in the buds preparing to open again. Tonight, when the sun sets and the sky bruises blue and gold, it will begin again. A flower will open, nectar will rise, a scent will drift into the air, light and soft and sure. Somewhere wings will lift, antennae will stir, a flight will begin, guided not by sight but by flavour, not by map but by trust. One bloom to another, one drop to the next, and the night will find its way home. Because the sweetness is still there, because nectar never forgets.